So the Zera Shimshon, the Parshas Vayeira, on page Kuf Ayin Hey, at the bottom, Os Beis, quotes a midrash. And this is something that the Zera Shimshon does a lot throughout his sefer, which is he will quote a midrash which doesn't seem like it's doing that much, and tell us what he thinks the midrash is really saying. Either that, or I'll take a midrash which seems to be saying something strange, and try to explain it. So here at the bottom of page Kuf Ayin Hey, Midrash, the Midrash says, V'hu Yoshev Pesach HaOel, referring to Avram who is sitting at the entrance to the tent, Pesach Tov Pasachta Legerim. That Avram opened up a good entryway for people to convert. Now, what does the Midrash want? We know Avram is the first of the Gerim. We know Avram is sitting at the entry to the tent. But what does the Medrash want when it says that they opened up a good entryway for the Gerim? So he says, this Medrash is very difficult. As all the commentaries write. So he quotes a Ramami Pano in his Sefer Asara Mamaros. And we're going straight for the big stuff here. She'avraham v'Sara b'kavanas hayichudim shalahem. Every time Avram and Sarah were together for all those years, and they had holy intentions, throughout all those years, which would be, according to some counts, it would be like 80 or 90 years, hayimamshichem etzlam be'ezivugam. Each time they were together, they drew close to them. Kol haneshamos shehem asidim lihibaraos legerim. All the neshamos that are going to be in the future gerim. So Abraham and Sarah gave life to thousands and thousands of people. All the Gerim are their children, the ones who are deserving to connect with the descendants of Yitzchak. Which means that they were going to have a son called Yitzchak. But there were certain souls that were lost throughout the world. And Abraham and Sarah, in their relationships, they brought these Gerim back. Which means, and if I'm overdoing it, I apologize to him, but basically the way that it's explained is that Abraham and Sarah actually produced or brought into the world every single future ger that would ever exist. They just didn't have a body yet for the child to be born. And so, let's say 3,000 years later, some woman is born and she has one of these souls. That child actually has, unlike most children who have three parents, the father, mother, and Hashem, that child actually has five parents. His Gentile mother and father, could even be a Jewish father, but the Gentile mother, and Hashem, and Abraham, and Sarah.
Is that what we call them, Ben Abraham and Ben?
That's exactly why we refer to Ger. Not when we say Ben Avraham Avinu, Ben Sarah Meinu. It's not because we just don't have any name to call them, so we pick some. They actually are biological children, spiritually speaking, of Avraham and Yitzchak. In fact, we should be referring to them as uncle because they are brother and sister with Yitzchak, our grandfather.
It's kind of ironic because there were no Jews yet. I mean, Abraham, you say, is the first Jew, but really nobody was converted into Judaism.
They weren't. You see, the definition of Yisrael didn't exist, but there were whatever Avraham Avinu was. We call him the first of the Gerim. So whatever he became, and that's already considered that's considered the Ager. So the.
How would you look upon then Jews who have, I don't use the word convert, but have gone to other religions?
They haven't done so. That's all in their heads. Right. It does not affect their soul. Right. Okay. Betam hanefesh asher asu b'charan, when it says that Abraham and Sarah, the souls which they made in Haran, look at the language of the verse. We say that these are the people that Abraham and Sarah converted. It shouldn't say that they made. should say that they taught, that they illuminated, that they. What does it say? What does it say? Why does it say they made them? But Amr Chachamim. Well, why doesn't it say the neshama? Well, it's got to have a pshat. Right. Well, nefesh can be plural as well. Yeah. Nefesh can be plural as well. But Amr Chachamim she'Avram megayer ha'anashim. You know, our sages tell us that Avram was megayer the men, Sarah megayeres ha'anashim, and Sarah was megayer the women. Ki lo ala gerim shel osa shabav Adam. He repeats himself. It's not just the gerim that existed at that time. Shahayu geri shala zulas, because that wouldn't have been a big deal. Those people converted and were subsequently lost to us. Allah called gerim asidim nizgayev liyazgeri tzedek. What this refers to is all the future converts who will convert and become righteous gerim. This Avram and Sarah, what they did is a redemption from them because they were lost because of the sin of Adam Arishon, and they were going to be lost forever. And Avram and Sarah collected each one of those souls, and that's why, of course, I'll go on to explain why it had to be that they went so long without children. So he says, "Ve'im zeh hayezivugam shel Avram v'Sarah mashlim toldosav shel Adam Arishon." So Avram and Sarah, by not having children, but by having this relationship, they completed and perfected all the descendants of Adam Arishon. K'dechsiv, as it says, "Ki av hamon goyim nesaticha," I've made you the father of all nations. V'hu ke'ein maaseh hayibum. Avram Avinu was basically doing yibum. And that's just an incredible way to phrase it. What is yibum? Yibum is when you have a brother who passes from the world and doesn't have children. So the other brother has to marry his wife. Why? So the Torah tells us to lahakim shem la'achiv, to establish a name for his brother. And what does that mean? Why is he? So we're told, the holy books tell us, and the Ramban says this right there, that the soul of the brother who died comes back as the soul of the child. You're actually giving the brothers, and it's as if that brother is the father.
Like a Gilgal?
Here it's deeper than Gilgal. This is like real, where you're like, we're saying that soul, that the child that's born is the son, on some level, of the brother who passed. By through this process, and it's almost like the same person as the brother who passed. And that's a very powerful thing that's going on. Maybe we'll leave that for another time.
Sorry, I have to digress one question. So you're saying that all the relations that they had before they had Yitzchak were spiritual.
Each one produced a child.
Each one produced a child of the future. So you can see a physical body because they were future gerim. So that's what they're saying.
Yeah, it's an incredible concept. So in the same way, there's a process of yibum by which you bring back the soul into the world, and we know that when Yosef was gone, Binyamin has 10 children. Binyamin has 10 children, names them all after Yosef. Rashi tells us in Chumash that all. So the holy books tell us that Binyamin was doing like a form of yibum. Even though it wasn't Yosef's wife, but it was a form of yibum where he was bringing back the 10 souls who were going to be. Now he didn't realize. We know that Yosef's supposed to have 12 sons, just like Yaakov had 12 sons. And as it turns out, Yosef only has 2 sons, but Binyamin has the other 10 sons for him. Now Binyamin doesn't know he's having the 10 sons because Yosef is supposed to have 12, and Yosef only had 2. But in the upper world, but that's basically the same system. So here he's saying there was like a yibum, where Abraham is collecting all those souls lost by the passing of Adam. It's like Abraham is doing yibum for Adam Arishon, an incredible concept. And will be blessed in you all the families of the earth. Lashon havracha she'osim la'anaf min ha'ilan. But bracha means blessing, but bracha can also mean like to branch out from a tree. The kule giyure minan havu ve'edchu, because all the gerim are really supposed to be born to the Jews, but they get pushed away. So until the time came for them to have a child, they were busy bringing souls, recollecting the souls that were lost throughout the world who were going to come back as gerim. But Daik Shapir Lomar, that's why it says Esa Nefesh Asher Asu, the souls which they made. Nefesh Davka, it means nefesh, it means souls. Asher Asu, the word Asu, Dimi the Ben Abakar Asher Asa, Shapirish Rashi Asher Tiken. Rashi explains in last parsha that the word Asher Asa, referring to the young calf, means that he fixed. So the word Asa means to fix. But of course, the souls were not fully fixed yet. She'elu haneshamas adayin lo yatzu minar tekan. The souls didn't actually come out into the world as human bodies. Shela'olam eino ger at sheyamul v'yitbo. Because even when they are born, they still then need to go through the process of milah, of circumcision, and tevilah, and immersion. V'zeh she'amar midrash, but that's the secret of what the midrash is really telling you. Pesach Tov, Pasachta Lagerim. Avram opened up the doorway for Gerim because he's the one who did the first step of all future Gerim. Not just for himself as a Ger, but he did the initial step for all the future Gerim.
And they have to do bris and
they just have, right, She'ima Mila, because then when they do the bris Mila, Ukrisis Arla, they cut away the foreskin. So then all these souls that Avram already began to fix, Yatsu Legamar Minartikan, can now come out of their shell, from being lost on the other side, and they can return.
What does it mean that they were lost, these souls? There was no, what were they lost to?
In the world, because the 600,000 souls are supposed to be born to the Jewish people. Instead, they're born, some of them are born to the Jewish people, most of them are born to the Jewish people, and some of them are souls of Jews born inside of a Gentile body.
But there were no Jews or Gentiles at this point. So
Oh, this is all future. They're fixing for the future.
so
Yeah,
these
souls
that are going to be lost?
Yeah, for the rest of history. Every single soul that would be born with a Jewish soul in a Gentile body, all of those, Avram and Sarah began the process of having them come back.
I'm intrigued by this language, she'osim la'anath min ha'elan, because this took place, the visit of the Malachim took place in Eloneh Mamre.
Right, and he sat them under a tree. Yeah, yeah.
Mamre is the one who advised him to give brisim, so you could interpret the famous question about why did, what was that advice all about? Since so it could be whether the future people needed to have brisim.
The future, which
Because
one?
in other words, the souls that he had made, would they have to have brisim?
Right, because since he was doing for the future, maybe. Okay, let's just add one more point to this before we move on. On page Kufa, I involve the next page. All right.
So, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, they were Gaon too.
Yeah.
That was his brother in the Chor.
So that was.
Well, they were from the Chor, right?
Yeah.
So that was his brother. So I could see how it would be like.
Well, something together. He's saying all the Gerim. So he says, "B'derech zeh yuvan medish tamur b'bereshis rabbah." With this, we can explain difficult medrash. Now we're going to skip the language of the medrash to the bottom of that paragraph, where it says 3 lines from the bottom of that top paragraph. V'lama lo nasan amila kodem. So everyone asks this question: why does Hashem wait to give Abraham the mitzvah of Milah when he's 99? We're at the top of page Kuf Ayin Vav, the first paragraph, bottom lines. Why he shouldn't be upset? Why does Hashem wait 99 years to give Abraham the mitzvah of Milah? And the answer is very simple now. Because they couldn't do it until they had collected every single soul of the future Gerim.
Who won't have a bris, who have
right.
to have it after.
Right? And so Hashem has to wait. And finally, after 99 years, when they had brought back all those souls, Hashem says, now it's time. And he says, and those souls have to come before Avram gets a bris, if that's your question. Based on the famous Talmudic expression that the handle of the axe to take down the forest comes from a piece of wood from a tree in that same forest. So in order for you to be able to fix something, you have to be able to connect to those people. And so for Abraham to bring back those souls, so to speak, to go down into that mire, into that mud, and be able to bring out those souls, he has to be uncircumcised. And then he can connect to those souls in the place of impurity which they are. And then, right, so he's got to be uncircumcised himself. And then when he's done bringing those souls back, then he can come and fix himself, and then they can come and fix themselves. That's what fascinates me about this whole approach is, as I said, that sometimes the Zera Shimshon gives his explanations in the worlds of Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. Some simple explanations, straightforward. What does it say in the parsha? And some of them are more in the world of illusion, the world of, and then some of them are in the world of secrets. What I find fascinating is when you have Svarim like the Zera Shimshon and others, the Orach Chaim was similar in this regard, where the area of what they consider pshat and what they consider sod starts to blend. Because he's reading this into the simple story of it. Basically, Hashem says to Abraham, you got to go to Eretz Yisrael, and there you're going to fix all the sins of Adam Arishon, you're going to bring back these souls, and this is what's going to happen, and now you fix those souls, now it's time to get a bris milah, and he's reading that into the simple reading of the story. It's just, okay? Let's turn to page...
Let me ask a question.
Sure.
So are all of the Jewish souls that are trapped in Goyish parents come out? Do they come out at the end, or are there some that don't?
Eventually, they'll all come out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Page Kuf Tzadi Tes. Yeah, it's just a matter of the. Some of them have an easier time. Some of them have a harder time. Some of them have miracles happen to them, which show them, and they come back. And some of them have to go on very difficult journeys. Mm-hmm. All right, page Kuf Tzadi Tes. He talks about the fact that Sodom was destroyed with sulfur. Mm-hmm. Why with sulfur? So he says, on page Kuf Tzadik Tes, Va'od at the top of the page. Just like Hashem had given the Sodomites a taste of the world to come in terms of how good and their land was, and how fruitful and how well they were doing, Kamash Amar Zal, as our sages tell us. So as punishment, they got to have a taste of Gehenna. Kachit iman ra mi'en Gehenna, because they messed up, they got the evil of Gehenna, shu choshech v'tzal maves, which is darkness and the shadow of death. B'himter alehem eish, isho shal Gehenna. So the fire which came down on them was not the fire of this world. It was the fire of Gehenna. The Gafris, and the reason why they got sulfur, because they did not recognize during their lifetime to do teshuvah. As the Medrash says, al pasuk, Hashem himtir, Hashem rained down on them. Amar Rabbi Yudan, mipnei ma adam meriach reach gafris v'nafsho saledus alav. Says Rabbi Yudan, if you've never heard this Medrash, it's very surprising. Why is it that when you smell sulfur, you become sick to your stomach? Sulfur, which has that, people say it's the rotten egg smell. But it's actually deeper than rotten eggs, because you smell rotten eggs, and it really hits you in a place. Because that's what Gehenna smells like. Gehenna is sulfur. And so deep in the pit of your stomach, you're smelling Gehenna. So he says, I don't understand. Why does God give us a little taste of Gehenna. Dafka b'chush shel hareach, specifically in the sense of smell. There's nothing that you can taste that tastes like Gehenna. I mean, I've eaten in some restaurants, maybe. but there really isn't anything which is Gehenna level.
That's where your neshama came in.
Well, we'll see. He's gonna talk about that. But why is it that I can tap into Gehenna specifically through the sense of smell?
The other thing is, why are they giving them a taste? They're about to go there. They're going to taste it forever.
Well, they're getting punished because that's measure for measure. He gave them a taste of Gan Eden, so they're going to die through a taste of Gehenna. That's measure for measure. But he's saying that that's true of all of us. Whenever you go by sulfur, you get a little sense, pun intended, of Gehenna.
Good.
And Mikalshkin Shaha'averis Shebazeh Achush Hem Yosa Miyat Mishar Achushim, he says, and actually I find this most difficult because the sense of smell is the one that you do the least number of sins with. What can you do? You can smell a little bit of the smell of immorality. You can smell a little avodah zarah. You can smell a little bit, but most of the time it's the other senses that are doing the sins. V'yesh lomar she'amru zal. Our sages tell us, Eizehu davar shehaneshama nehanes mimenu. What is the one sense which your neshama benefits from? Ve'ein haguf nehena mimenu, and your guf does not benefit from. Have omer zehareach, it's the smell. I want to talk about this because this is very important because we misunderstand this. At the end of Shabbos, all of us are feeling very abandoned. We feel horrible. How are we going to live another week without Shabbos? I'm sure everyone here was just falling apart. And so our sages knew that the only way that we can reinvigorate ourselves is we take something that smells good, and we smell it, and it gives us a little nechama, a little consolation. And unfortunately, we're not in touch with this enough. And let me explain why. You see, we have a guf and we have a neshama. You can choose how much you want your guf to follow your neshama and how much you want your neshama to follow your guf. That's your choice, that's your bechira. The more that you make your neshama follow your guf, the more you become aware and cognizant of everything that the guf, your body, is experiencing, and the less you are in touch with what your neshama is experiencing. While the more that you make your guf follow your neshama, the more in touch you are with your neshama, which is why there are certain people who can look at a person and they can see a lot about that person, they can feel and sense the neshama, because those are the people who make their guf follow the neshama, and the more that the neshama is in charge, and the neshama is who the person really is, the more the neshama has, the neshama is what presents its feelings, and it, of course, has much greater knowledge and awareness of what's going on in the spiritual world more than what. So what that means is you have to make a choice. Do you want to be able to look at a verse in the Torah and be able to say, my neshama feels that this is the explanation? Or would you rather be able to say, looking ahead, I think this team is going to win the Stanley Cup? You can do one of those two. There's a balance within the world, but whichever you'd like to have a greater awareness of, that's your choice for where you'd like to take things. So if we did a better job of allowing our bodies to experience what the soul experiences, then when Shabbos comes in, we would feel completely different. The great tzaddikim actually grew physically a head taller on Shabbos. They looked till their face was shining. Everything about them was different because when Shabbos is here, you have an extra neshama. So if you have an extra neshama, it reflects itself in the soul. If Shabbos becomes the day when I can't do things, and then all of Shabbos, it's already 4 o'clock, and after a whole nother hour of Shabbos, if that's the way, or even when Shabbos ends at 8 o'clock, you go, what a long day, what am I supposed to do? And as soon as Shabbos goes out, you're already running to find something to do, even though you don't really have anything to do, but you just need to get away from Shabbos. Then you don't feel Shabbos, and the body actually feels maybe a sense of relief when Shabbos is gone, because that's the body wants to be able to indulge in the world, and there's all these restrictions on Shabbos. So now you can finally check the news and whatever else that your body is leading you all day to do. But if you are in touch with your neshama, when the Shabbos leaves, there's a downer there. It really brings you down. And so when you smell, we think that we enjoy a good smell. That's actually not you. As you see the language here, davar shaneshama nahanis mimenu ve'ein haguf nahana mimenu. It's not your body. That's your soul. And when you smell something, obviously it translates into the body taking pleasure. But the true pleasure that's experienced is in the soul. And if we were more in touch with the neshama, we could actually feel that better. But you should know, even if you don't feel it, when you make the bracha, borei minei besamim, and you smell it, and it smells good, you should know that even though you can't feel it, your neshama inside you has been elevated and really feels it in a very powerful way, much more than you do on the outside. And therefore it's a much bigger deal than we think. So he says, Od Amru, our sages further tell us, Shenishmaso shel Adam, mi'ida bo b'chol yom, that your neshama testifies against you every day. When a person goes to sleep at night, your neshama goes up and has to face a court case for all the things that you've done. And you have no clue. You come back the next day, you say, wow, that was a good sleep, I'm now ready to start my day. Meanwhile, your neshama says, well, good for you, I'm glad you slept. Right? But Yadash Neframimenu, and knows that we're going to collect from him. Aval haguf mutba b'tayvus ha'olam, the body is embedded in desires of this world. Ula'olam choshev, and he's always thinking, V'haya kazeh yom machar gadol yeser ma'od, may tomorrow be even better than this. So he says, L'chein b'chusha reach, therefore it's the sense of smell. Shaneshama levad nanismenu, that's the place where you're the most in touch with the neshama. Nishar bo remes shal Gehenim, that's where that reminder of what Gehenim is like. K'dei shetisker ha'onesh yoser, in order to recognize the sense of touch. You're so out of touch with what the real world is about that the sense of touch couldn't get you access to a taste of Gehenim. Your sense of taste is so far from spirituality, unfortunately, that God couldn't put anything into the world. You would taste it and you wouldn't be able to taste Gehenim because it would be so this worldly that you wouldn't recognize Gehenim. Only the sense of smell, which continues to be connected to the neshama, which continues to be attached to what the world is really about, that's the only channel by which you can access a sense of Gehenim. And that's why that smell of sulfur, which is a taste of Gehenim, is specific to the sense of smell. When you smell sulfur, you're supposed to become sick to your stomach and think about Gehenim and what it brings.
I thought sound was the same, had that big effect. That's why your speech is so unique, and
all the senses are great, but the sense of sound we use for the physical things. We use it very much for indulgence in this world.
It seems like Hashem works on the same basis, because the korbanos, they always describe them as reach nichoach.
Everything is sense of smell, right? And that's the spiritual connection. That's why it uses the smell. So he says, so God put a warning into the world to remind us of a Gehenim. So what God could have done with our eyes would be that there would be somewhere in the sky there would be an image of Gehenim. But our eyes wouldn't read it well. It's only the sense of smell. So when you smell that sulfur, that deep, sickening smell, that's supposed to inspire the person to do teshuvah.
The sense of smell was also the one not corrupted in Gan Eden.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the right. That's the reason why it still has the neshama can still benefit from it. Right.
Our soul came through that vehicle as well, taking the nostrils.
Yeah, well, that's Ricky mentioned that before, that the soul comes through the nose, but it's, you see, the nose and the sense of smell didn't necessarily have to go together, but they do. The nose has a lot of functions. A lot of functions. You make a list of all the things that your nose does, you'd be very surprised.
Holds up your
But
glasses.
holds up your glasses.
But Nadav and Avihu, they were taken that way because
Right.
their bodies didn't burn; they were burned from their souls were burned. That's the entryway.
Right. Okay, page Reish Yud. Yeah, that was taken straight out the same way it came.
To bug intelligence.
Okay, now we're moving to the world of Remez on page Reish Yud at the bottom. There he's discussing Avraham naming the place Hashem Yireh. Hashem will see, which is very difficult. And then he makes it even more difficult when he says Asher Ye'amer Hayom V'har Hashem Yireh, which will be said today upon the mountain of Hashem, he will be seen. The whole thing is difficult to translate even. But he calls the place Hashem Yireh, and as we know in the previous parsha, Shem called the place Shalem, Malki Tzedek Melech Shalem, and that's why it's called Yerushalayim, or Yerushalayim as we call it, because it's a combination of the name that Shem gave it, Shalem, and the name that Avram gave it, Yireh. So he says, I'd like to explain, at the bottom of page Reish Yud, he says we have a mitzvah of shalosh regalim, of 3 Yamim Tovim, and during those Yamim Tovim we're supposed to be Yeira'eh as Pnei Hashem Elakacha. We're supposed to appear before to be seen by Hashem, which is a very interesting mitzvah, because we say that you're supposed to bring up karbanos, you're supposed to show up to the base of to bring karbanos, but this is the place where the Torah gives us the mitzvah to make Hashem see us. It's a very interesting, unique mitzvah. So he says, why is it dafka b'regalim? Why is this a mitzvah only on Yom Tov? V'lama dafka azcharim? And why, of all mitzvahs, is this the men? Umayishnan mitzvahs hakel, which is not true of the mitzvah hakel when we all gather shekasu b'hakel esa'am anashim ataf, men, women, and children. So you see, it can't be a society thing. You know, the women don't want to. They have someone has to stay home with the kids, and there's no such. You see, by hakel everyone comes. So why is it by the shalosh regalim it's only the men? Ubereish chagiga tosfos havia Yerushalmi. In the beginning of Chagiga, Tosfos quotes the Yerushalmi, "Sheberi'iyas panim ba'azara hakol chayavim kamo b'hakel," and then he says that when it comes to be seen, everyone is obligated just like hakel. Then he says, "No, she'ikar mitzvah yisregel lahavi olas riyah." That the main mitzvah is to bring the korban, which is called olas riyah, the korban of being seen. And you cite this every morning in the davening when you say Elu devarim she'en lahem shir. These are the things that have no measure. Hapeah v'abikurim v'ha'ra'ayon. Ra'ayon refers to the sacrifices you bring when you come up to the Beis Hamikdash to be seen by Hashem. So he says the following explanation, a beautiful explanation. Ratam nira. Lefi shahayamim tovim, the yamim tovim of Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, heim os ben Yisrael la'aviyam shabashamayim, are the sign between Hashem and the Jewish people. Sheyesh ba'osan ayamim tosefes kedusha liYisrael. That these are days when we are holier. Shafilu ame ha'aratzos metarin atzman beregel. Even the unlearned people, everyone, would purify themselves for Yom Tov and come up to the Beis Hamikdash. L'chein, therefore, Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu litan lahem mitzvah zu b'yamim hakadoshim. Hashem wanted to give them a special mitzvah on these holy days, K'dei liskor lahem akedas Yitzchak sheniskadish b'har haMoriah, to remind Hashem of the Akedah of Yitzchak on the mountain. U'kamosh Yitzchak hayuzacha, so because Yitzchak was the son, he was the male, Kach nitztavu kol hazacharim davka, that's why it's a commandment for the men to come up. It's an incredible concept. Every single aliyah or regel is a reenactment of Akedas Yitzchak. So the role that the woman plays in Aliyah L'Regel is whatever role Sarah Imenu played in Aliyah L'Regel. And you've got the fathers and the sons bringing up. If the son is of a certain age, he's supposed to bring him up. So the men going, because it's a reenactment of Akedas Yitzchak. And instead of bringing Yitzchak up as the Ola, we bring a carbon Ola, which is to be seen by Hashem. And the Ola, of course, is also a male, which was what the ram was. Rams, by definition, with the horns, are male. So the whole process of Aliyah L'Regel is a reenactment of Akedas Yitzchak.
A reaffirmation of our covenant with him because of that act.
Right.
That's interesting.
So he says,
Is he introducing this idea?
he's inventing this concept. He says that's what Avram says. Hashem will see. Nothing hidden from Hashem. And you can hide in the deepest, darkest corners. Hashem will still see you. Hashem sees through all space and all time. What does it mean? Hashem will see. Why does Avram say in this place, Hashem yireh, Hashem will see? There's something specific that Hashem is going to see in this place. This mountain is the place where everything comes channeled down into this world. So what Avram is saying a prayer, he's saying, Hashem Yireh, I see the way you look at me on this mountain. I want my children to have the opportunity that you should look at them in the same way that you look at me. So Tziva lanu HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzvahs re'iyah b'regalim. So Hashem said, okay, 3 Yomim Tovim, Shem Keneged Gimel Avos. The 3 Yomim Tovim actually correspond to our 3 forefathers. Pesach corresponds to Avram, many different reasons why, but it's in terms of the chesed and the redemption and the creation of the Jewish people. This story is a result of him being connected to Pesach. Right, but the essential connection is that Abraham represents the chesed and the beginning and the creation of the Jewish people. Yitzchak represents Gevura, din, which is the Torah is given from Mimino Eish Das Lamo, the fiery law, and so Yitzchak is connected to Shavuos, and Sukkos, which represents the gathering of all the Jewish people and the celebration of the perfection of the completion and the balance within the Jewish people of reverence and joy of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. That's all in Yaakov, the Gimel Avos. So he says, therefore, when the Avos are in the world, their midas are in the world, those Gimel Regalim, we come up to the Beis HaMikdash at that time and we reenact the Akedah by having specifically the men. The women shouldn't come because that was the story. Sarah stayed home and Avram and Yitzchak went, and they go v'shaprik amar hamedrash Hashem yireh k'derecham shalish pa'amim shal tam shal rias haregel. The whole mitzvah of rias haregel ba'machmas akedas Yitzchak was meant to remind Hashem to re-experience the Akedah of Yitzchak. We'll stop here.